Most founders think that they need better tools, more staff, or fancy AI to scale their business. What if I told you that the businesses that actually scale aren't the ones with the newest tech stack or the biggest team? And after working with dozens of businesses on their operations and automations, I discovered that the single biggest difference between businesses that scale successfully and those that stay stuck isn't their tools. It's their ability to visualize and optimize their current processes. My name is Nikita. I'm the founder of IntelScale, and we help businesses scale through efficient operations and AI automation. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to create process maps that will become the foundation of your business scaling strategy. So the first mistake that I see business owners make when it comes to process mapping is not actually doing process mapping at all. Most business owners that I speak to don't even do that. The reason why it's such a big mistake is that you can't really improve what you don't see, right? Like, you can probably have some sort of visual representation of the process in your head, but you don't actually see the little things are actually contributing to the process itself. My first biggest recommendation that you can do is just start process mapping. Get a paper, get a pen, and just start mapping things out. The next big logical mistake that business owners make is that they don't actually map out the correct process. And what I mean by that, most people that want to start process mapping start with easy processes that they already know pretty well, but that's probably not the way you want to go. You want to start mapping things out from the most bottlenecky processes, meaning the processes that slow you down the most. Like, if you had one process, you could double its efficiency. What process with that double efficiency would give you the most output? Essentially, usually these processes are something like fulfillment. That's what we focus on at IntelScale. We help usually with fulfillment side of things. For you, it could be maybe lead generation, sales, onboarding is a big thing. But now let's talk about how to actually create these maps. Now that you know what processes to focus on first, let's actually show you how to create these maps efficiently so that everyone who looks at them actually understands what's going on. You already might see that I have this big red circly thing which says client onboarded, and this is our trigger for our process. So every single process has a trigger, every single task has a trigger. You just need to think about like what it actually is for your specific use case. So for the sales process, for example, it could be something like a lead filled out a form, somebody DM'd you on LinkedIn or Slack, and you start the process based on that. So after the client onboarded, for me, what we usually have is the process mapping session. This is where we have a call with the client and we literally map out something like this, but for their internal processes that we're trying to improve. Then probably the only question that you need to ask yourself while building these maps is what happens next? Create database structure. Usually we're just creating some sort of a project management setup for them, improving project management, side of things. And then you're going to continue asking yourself this question. You're going to have these steps. What happens next? What happens next? What happens next? And at some point you're going to run into the first decision point that you need to map. Usually we represent them with diamond shape. This is usually kind of the standard practice. So this is something like, do we need a review call for this session? Or if you had a, some sort of internal QA step right here, you might have a question like QA passed as an example. Based on this, you're either going to have the first path or the path that says no, meaning like internal QA passed, yes or no. And then based on that, you continue. Again, you ask yourself what happens next. If QA is not passed, we go down this route. What happens after that? If QA is passed, what is the next logical thing that we need to do? So sometimes, usually after these decision points, as you might see, they sometimes go back. So if QA is not passed, we can go back to mapping session. We can go back to like creating the database structure, something like that. If QA is passed, we actually move on to the next kind of stage of things. So after this process map is finished, you need to start asking yourself questions like, who is responsible for every single step or every single stage in the process? So for example, for the process mapping session, who's responsible? That's me. So you just put like a box on top of it and say Nikita, who's responsible for this. Or if you have a certain role responsible for this and you have a bunch of people responsible for this, so it could be a manager, and then you just assign a manager based on that. For creating database structure, it could be a developer. Then for example, for the client QA, it could again be a manager, and you just continue asking yourself questions like, who is responsible for this stage? And this gives you clarity like who's doing what in the process. Then you can actually see who's working on what things the most. Like if you have a bunch of steps done by a developer, maybe that's something that you need to improve. Maybe you need to offload the work somehow. Maybe you need to restructure the process a little bit so that it's a little bit more balanced and one role is not that busy. And then the next thing that you do is literally ask yourself like, why are we doing this way? So after you've mapped out everything, you have all of the process map, you see everyone who's responsible for what stage, and you can start asking yourself the next question, which is, why do we have certain things? So for example, for me, we have this step which is called pick automation, or pick like a project to start working on. And I'm gonna ask myself, why do we have this stage? Obviously we need to know what to start working on, but why do we have it in this stage? What if we have the step somewhere in the process mapping session with the client? So what if we figure out what project to work on while we are doing the process map? Then we don't need to go back and forth with the client and figure out things what to work on. Then you might find something else. You might go through all of these steps and like see, hey, like why are we doing this step? Okay, this is the reason, but what if we slightly change that? What if we put it before doing something else so that like when we get to the next stage, it actually improves something? And literally just go through this process map and just see and look at the things that can be improved. Like just ask yourself, like like, why are we doing this? And sometimes you will get answers that you didn't have before, and you will have ideas on how to reorganize some stuff, how to remove some stuff to make your process more efficient. And after you're done with the process map, you can now start actually implementing everything you've done into your actual process. So start with one little change that you made in the diagram, implement it in the process, see the results, implement another thing, etc. And after everything is done, you can now actually start automating and implementing AI once you have a very efficient and optimized process. If you don't know what tasks to automate first, you can reach out to someone who does. You can reach out to me. I have my access on LinkedIn somewhere in the description down below. You can also book an audit call with me so that we can actually talk about your processes, see what can actually be automated, what can be improved, maybe somewhere you can implement AI and actually scale your business with that. Happy to talk, and hopefully you found this video helpful. Hopefully you now understand the power of these process maps and why you should actually use them, how to build them efficiently so that they bring value. Hope you enjoyed, and take care.